Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to take a look at Game 1 of the 2024 World Chess Championship between Liren and Gukesh. Just to be clear up front, this is not meant to be a recap of the game. I'm not a titles player or chess coach. I'm just a random person trying to get better at chess, so I'm not really qualified to give a recap of this game. I'm trying to learn from it, and the reason I chose this game is because Liren played the French defense, which I've been trying to play, and spoiler alert, he won. By the time you see this video, they're probably on Game 4 or 5, but in my time zone, this morning was Game 1. My first issue here is going to be getting this game onto a normal-sized board. I ran into this problem the last time I tried to look at a World Championship game. Chess.com puts it in a separate format that's not the same as the normal format that I normally see and analyze games in. It looks like I can make the board smaller, which is pointless, but I can't make it larger than this. I could crop into it, but why can't it just be the normal size from a normal board? I don't know. Looks like what I'm going to have to do is copy the PGN file here. Oh no, this is not a clean PGN. Let's see, if I take out clock times, is that clean or did they have annotations? No, okay, I think this is a clean PGN. I'm going to copy this into the normal analysis board and see if I can get a normal board here to follow this game with. Oh, that looks much better. All right. I could have edited that part out, but I chose to leave it in out of frustration for these sites putting those games in a strange format. They already have the code for this format. Why not put the games in this format? Anyway, I'm going to look at this from the black perspective because I am, as I said, studying the French defense, which is e6 as a response to white's e4. I will note the point at which it deviates from my knowledge. I have played this far, of course, and this far. Here, what I have almost always seen, if we reach this position, I don't always reach this position because my opponent doesn't always play the d4 move. Sometimes they get the knight out here, sometimes they get this knight out, but if they do play d4 and I play d5, I almost always get this pawn pushing forward, although every now and then I get a knight out. When they do get the knight out to c3, I go ahead and take the e-pawn. If they push this forward, I play c5. It looks like Gukesh did play the knight to c3, but Ding did not take. It looks like taking is, according to Stockfish, the light version that I'm using here, about the same as what he played, knight to f6. Now, I have seen this before, recommended by Stockfish, but I don't think I've ever played it because I know they're just going to play e5, which is what they did. And then he would come back here, and that's what I've seen. But then I feel like that pawn's always in my way, but maybe I can learn something here. Again, what I've always played here is they take with the knight, I put this knight out. Sometimes they take the knight, and then I take with my queen. I've gone through that before, but I'm pretty sure I've never played this because of e5, which is white's best move. And now all black can really do is go back here. You can put the knight on e4, but then they're going to take it, and you're going to take, and you've already doubled pawns and gotten rid of your d-pawn. So I do understand moving this knight back here, but now, oh wait, do you play c5 after this? Okay, it looks like you can still play c5. It's just that somehow this g-knight got over here to the d file. I think I can remember that. I have also had opponents play f4, which is what Gukesh played here, but not after this exact series of moves. I've had opponents play f4 on move 2. Instead of d4, they play f4 right away. Again, I have not reached this position, but I am trying to get used to the idea, which starts here. Putting the knight out, the pawn jumps forward, I put the knight back on d7, and then they play f4. So this is what happened. Gukesh played f4, and it looks like Stockfish had trouble deciding between a6 or c5, but since c5 is something I play in other versions, that would be much easier for me to remember. And that is what Ding played here. So, okay, so far so good. I think I can manage this far. Although if I have an opponent that does something different on that move, then, I would have to figure it out from there. Now here, Stockfish would play knight to f3, which is probably what I would play as white. Now that I've got the f pawn here, I'm pretty sure you want the knight behind that pawn, but I don't know. Stockfish says it's okay to play bishop to e3 as well, which also makes sense, defends both of those pawns. But it's as if they play that. I'm just going to go ahead and take this one. But Gukesh didn't play either of those moves. He moved this front knight back here to e2, I guess to defend the d-pawn? It's not one of the top 2 moves, but I wonder how bad it was. It lost what little advantage white had, and now they're very nearly even. The engine suggests bishop to e7 or knight to c6. I think knight to c6 would make sense. It's also one of the moves that I have been playing in the French defense. Again, not in this exact variation because I haven't seen that, but this makes sense. I do that a lot. It helps to put pressure on the d-pawn, among other things. Okay, so that makes sense. That's what Liren played. I would probably expect a c3 here, or the knight to f3 since he didn't play it earlier. And Gukesh played c3, makes sense. Protecting the d pawn. Now it's protected 3 different ways, and he can still add another protector to it with that bishop. And again, the engine thinks maybe bishop to e7, or maybe now go ahead and do f6. You have both your knight and your queen pointed at f6, so we can, instead of chipping away from the base of the pawn chain, we're just going to go right to the peak of the pawn chain and start chipping away now. It says they would play knight to f3, and then we would just leave that there and go ahead and get the bishop out. Okay, so those 2 moves should be played in any order according to the engine. Ding obviously does not have the engine on during this game and plays a5. As you saw when I copied the PGN, I did not copy the clock times because I'm not really concerned about that, although now I realize I am curious as to which moves these amazing players spent more time on. Because that definitely wasn't an engine recommended move, but the advantage stayed about the same. Now you back up. Now Stockfish thinks a5 is pretty good. That happens a lot with this late version of Stockfish when a move is not listed but you play it and then you come back. It's like, oh, that was actually pretty good. I assume that when these players train that they're training with, analyzing their games with a much stronger version of Stockfish than I have here. I assume. Not to mention coaches, friends, partners, whatnot. But a5, yep, Stockfish says now, oh yeah, I would play a5 for sure, even though it didn't think of that earlier. So a5 is not a move I would have thought of. I'm not sure what a5 does. It maybe is trying to cut off this idea of a b4 push, but I don't think Gukesh was considering that, probably. Or maybe it's just generally protecting squares over here across the other side of the board, because Ding's already controlling quite a few squares over there, not to mention the knight hitting those 2. I guess the queen is controlling a square on the other side as well. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out a5. I've put some thought into it here, and again, Stockfish says that's pretty good, but it doesn't know what'll happen after that. And I don't know if Ding knew what would happen after that, but knight to f3 still makes sense. h4 is Stockfish thinks about. Okay, Stockfish is saying, hey, he played a5. Why not play a4 and we'll just go down each other's sides of the board there. But knight to f3 makes sense to me. As I said earlier, that's what Gukesh played. And now Stockfish sees the wisdom of a5 a second ago. It's like, hey, wait, you could go ahead and play a4 now. And he did. Okay. Well, now see, this I think I understand. This keeps that pawn from going very far, very fast. Although I don't know what's to keep. See, if I had an opponent and I was in this position, I think my similarly rated to me opponent would probably play b3 here. Stockfish definitely would not, but I think a lot of people I play would just play b3 here. Because if I took, they just take, and they have this open file that they can put the rook on. If I took, they couldn't take with this pawn because their rook's undefended just like mine. But I think that's what a lot of people that I have played would play here. Stockfish again suggests h4 or bishop to e3, which it has both suggested in the past. Gukesh found that one. And now Liren played bishop to e7, which Stockfish had been saying. Okay, well, you don't have anywhere else to put it, and I guess he's thinking about castling. Unless you want to try fianchettoing, which I don't know about. Engine also says queen to b6, which is something else that I play here, but bishop to e7 makes sense. You've gained some space on the queen side, but you still haven't castled. You still haven't developed either bishop. We understand that the light squared bishop is the bad French bishop, so to speak, because it always has trouble getting through there, and I seem to have trouble getting it out this way too. But we get at least one of them out this way. Again, Stockfish would play h4 and just start heading down the h side of the board, the king side. Or knight to g3, which is this knight that started way over here and has already moved twice. But that makes sense. That gets it out of the way of this bishop, which hasn't moved. Just like I just now moved my bishop, it's almost like the engine suddenly realized they haven't moved their bishop either and wants to come out this way to get out of the way of their bishop. Maybe Gukesh wanted to move his bishop, but he wanted to go this way, so he got the g-pawn out of the way with g4, which for the first time swings the balance of the evaluation into the black. So I'm guessing this wasn't part of his prep, because if it was, would he have played that? Or would he have played knight to g3? Although I think this way, not only do you free your bishop, you can still put the knight on g3 and you've got 2 pawns at the front. And it wasn't horrible. It wasn't a blunder or anything. It just slowly, very incrementally swings the balance into the black side. And for people at this level, sometimes that's all they need. And Stockfish would castle right in front of all those pawns. Or play b5, because white hasn't done anything to stop our pawn progress over here on the queen side. We might as well keep going, is what the engine seems to be saying. But it also says you're really safe to castle here. Ding wasn't entirely convinced of that, and in fact wanted to continue expanding on the queen side, so he went queen to a5, and I'm curious as to what that did to the evaluation. It sent it back into white's territory a little bit. Now, for all I know, both of them are still in prep, because I know a lot of times, people at that level have prep out to move 17 or 20, especially in a long studied defense like the French. But it feels like to me that this is out of prep for both of them. The G4 and the queen to A5 both seem, I don't know, it seems like they're thinking on their own. But I don't know, because this expansion here, and it looks like we're about to keep going with it. Maybe that's why the queen goes there, is to protect B5, because if Gukesh does play knight to G3 over here, then the bishop's pointed that way. But now it doesn't matter because the queen's going to guard that spot. And you're pinning this pawn, so maybe he looked at this all before. Now, I might have been right about this G4 move, wanting to get out of the way of both of those pieces, because it does look like Gukesh played the bishop here, but now it's not pointed there anymore, so what's the queen doing here? But it does say go ahead and play B5. I think, Stockfish agreed with me here rather than Ding, because Ding didn't play B5. I thought that's why he put the queen there, but apparently not. Also, now that that bishop's off that diagonal, maybe it doesn't matter anymore and he can do whatever he wants. He played A3, which wasn't great because you can just push past. And now that pawn's not going to go anywhere for a long time. So I don't really understand A3. Okay, just backing up right here. Again, he might have played queen to A5 with the intention of playing A3. I don't know. But when he did that, and I tried to figure out why, it looked like he was protecting B5. That seemed obvious to me. The engine says just play B5 now. Don't put the queen over there. Play B5 now or castle. But once you put the queen there and white moves the bishop, then either knight to B6 or B5. I personally would be tempted to play B5 first, because once you put the knight in front of it, then you can't play B5. You play B5 first, you can still play knight to B6. If I can help it, if I have time to think about it, I try not to make a move that prevents my other candidate move. So I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, and I definitely would not win a game at any speed at any time against Ding Liren, unless possibly if he was sound asleep. But in this case, I think I understood that a little bit better. But who knows? Who knows? He might have looked at all of this a long time ago and had an idea about eventually getting a piece down there protected by this pawn. I don't know. Well, Gukesh figured that one out pretty easily, and now this pawn's kind of stuck for the time being. Again, we want to play B5, or C takes D4, which is what he played. But now B4. Since you went ahead and put your queen over there, we're going to play B4. Queen needs to come back. It did. Now he can take back this pawn with either knight, but the taking back with the E-knight is better. I guess we're not putting it on G3 anymore. Let's put that E-knight in the middle. And Ding would be okay to trade, but it's better not to. It's better to let him come down in here and just go ahead and put this knight on B6, because you never moved the B pawn, and so now don't worry about it, I think is what's happening. But now this becomes more clear to me, because now this knight has a pretty easy path down there, which is something I just mentioned a second ago. Okay, I didn't see that when it was back here, but now I see that, and maybe that's why knight to B6 was an option. Stockfish would play knight to B5 to threaten the queen, but the queen would just go back one. Interestingly, the second best move is also knight to B5. What? Okay, I've run into that, I think mostly on Lichess, but it's happening here too. So if you don't want to play knight to B5, why not try this other move, knight to B5? And in both cases, queen to D8. I think that's a mistake. What if we back up? Knight to B6 is the best move. Now is it going to give us two different moves here? Okay, castling or knight to B5. Whoops, not knight to B5. Queen to E2 or castling. So what was knight to B5 about? I don't know. Gukesh didn't know either, which is why he castled. Sorry, I've backed up and gone forward 2 or 3 different times here, and at one point we got castling was the best move. At another point we got queen to E2 was the best move, but now it's settled back on knight to B5. That's interesting. I don't know if I would have castled here or not, but that's what Gukesh did. Okay, so what does Ding need to do? Take the knight? No. Let this tension remain. Put this knight on C4. Okay, so we are still thinking about B2? Yes, way down there the knight gets to B2. After about 8 moves or something. It's going to be a long road. So knight to C4 is listed as the best move, and that's what Ding played. It's attacking the bishop, which is currently not defended, so maybe that's what queen to E2 was about earlier, or we can just drop the bishop back. Okay, Gukesh just drops it back, and now we're headed in here? No, not yet, because we have other problems to take care of first. Stockfish thinks the light squared bishop ought to go ahead and develop, which I guess adds another defender to that knight, or just take that knight. Okay, Ding develops. Now, for a second, I saw queen to E2 listed. Also, knight to D2, which is have all the knights pointed at each other. I guess let's just point all the knights at each other. Or rook to E1, which points at the pawn and the other pawn and the bishop and eventually the king. Maybe? Okay, so Gukesh plays queen to E2. Now it's time to take the knight on D4. I don't know why they all waited so long, but now Stockfish and Ding thought it was time. And you should take back with the bishop or the knight, either one. For a second it said the knight was best, now it says the bishop's best, maybe it doesn't matter that much. And now knight to B2. So again, maybe when Ding put the queen over here and started pushing this pawn, that's what it was all about. I don't know why the queen needed to be there because the rook was already behind the pawn. And as you saw, Stockfish didn't understand very much queen to a5 either. But maybe that was the dual purpose thing. Maybe it was doing the guarding of b5 like I suggested. I don't know. But now this knight's in here. I mean, it's guarding 3-4 squares on the other side of the board, but it only looks like maybe 3 of them are important. And now it's dead even, according to the engine. Stockfish says queen to f3 would be fine. I don't know why. I have no idea why that would be good. Or bishop to e1, which, oh, that's why. This pawn's hanging. Okay, because the knight got out of the way. So now this pawn, c3, is under fire. Okay, so bishop to e1 would protect it. Queen to f3 would protect it. Gukesh found queen to e3, which I don't know why that was any worse. It does protect that. Rook to c8 or h5. Wow, h5 would... The engine says if Ding played h5, Gukesh would just play g5. That's what I was about to say, because once that h-pawn's out of there, how do you stop the g-pawn? But then you'd have to play g6, and you'd have, oh my goodness, you'd have 2 pawns across midfield over here on the king side. And Ding still hasn't castled. It's move 19, and Ding still has his king in the middle, which I am trying to learn from, that in the French, especially the advanced French, where the middle is locked up with those pawns, the king might be kind of safe there. Especially if we get both these bishops here right in front of the king. But he did play the best move, which was putting the rook on a semi-open file, because it doesn't look like anybody can get to that pawn yet. So the rook's not needed on the a file anymore. I think I understand. Again, bishop to e1 or rook f to c1. Gukesh brought the other rook over, which pushes it. We're still pushing a little bit more into the black now. Only one move works here, and that's queen to c4. Because he's quit defending the a pawn, maybe. So the rook came over here because Ding had just lined up another attacker and is still going for the c-pawn. That's why these other rook moves were recommended. But the a-rook coming over undefends the a-pawn. So this makes sense because now the a-pawn is under attack and we have a pawn down here. The engine wants to play e1, rook to e1, I guess, to bring this bishop around, possibly. And it doesn't look like we're going to take the a-pawn anytime soon. That's why I would have put the queen here, but that's not why he put it there, or Stockfish. Gukesh had other ideas and started pushing on the king side. He is coming, but now look at the evaluation. It's getting close to -1. What do you do here? I assume I would take. It's probably, I mean, it's got to be a bad idea, but that's probably what I would do. This looks like another place where one of the players might have spent a lot of time here. Actually, I don't know why I said that. Since they made no move to defend that pawn, I would probably just take it, but I would probably lose to even someone rated my level, not to mention one of these people. Queen to d3 was the best move, and Ding played that, offering the queen trade, but Gukesh doesn't have to respond. He doesn't have to take or run away because his queen is defended, so they can just let him sit there. I don't know that I've ever seen this. Both queens are defended by minor pieces here, and they're just going to sit there facing each other. g5 is the best move here. And then it says Ding would castle. If Gukesh had played g5, would Ding have castled? I want to go into the alternate universe where Gukesh found g5 and see what Ding would have done. I'm very curious about that. But Gukesh was not interested in the queen trade and brought this queen back, which puts Ding over -1, getting close to -2. 1.7. Now, just to be clear, I have no idea why the engine is saying leave the queens there. In fact, now that I've gone back, it suggests you could move the queen if you want, but it's okay if they keep staring at each other. But g5 is still better in castling. Oh, I don't know. I don't have the guts to castle into that onslaught of pawns right there. I would find a way to get checkmated in minutes, but that's what it says. So just getting the queen out of that staring contest cost Gukesh maybe the game. I don't know if it gets closer to even after this or not, but that's nearly -2. But only if Ding finds bishop to g5 to stop this onslaught of pawns and aim at the rook, and it says the rook would move and then he would castle. Wow. Well, Ding found that, and it might be because he looked around and there was nothing else that made sense. I'm sure I would find a way to mess this up. I don't know how. Again, I might consider taking this. I might consider putting the queen back to aim for that pawn. But then you can just put the rook back. No, you can't, because then I get this pawn. Maybe that's why Gukesh went here, because it still protects this pawn. Clearly, Ding is centered around the idea of that pawn. The C pawn, more than the A pawn, is important right now. Maybe the A pawn becomes important later. But he had to find bishop to g5 here, and he did. Stockfish has settled on knight to b3 as the best move, but rook to c2 is pretty good as well. I don't know why I was pointing over there when I said rook to c2. That's what I did. This is rook to c2, where it is protected by the knight. I'm trying to figure out why it's better than rook to b1. What was wrong with rook to b1? Because the idea is to get it out of this danger. You don't want to go down that exchange right now. Why? What's wrong? I'm going to go ahead and play rook to b1 just out of curiosity. That would have been bad because of bishop to d2, which is here. Oh, because now the queen has to come up to e2, and we get this pawn. Oh, we're still, okay. Man, I get distracted so easily, but yeah, I forgot we're still after this pawn. That's why it has to be rook to c2. Okay, because we're still defending the c pawn. Stockfish would now castle if it was playing with the black pieces, or play rook to c4, which is over here. That's what Ding played. What is the idea of that? Oh my, I have no idea why that's a good move. It also makes me really nervous to have my queen. I just blocked my queen. If you've watched any of my videos, especially like my live videos where I'm playing a live game, which I don't do much anymore, but I like to leave myself escape routes for the queen. If I get my queen down in there, which I tend to not do early, although 23 is not early, but still, when I do get my queen in there, I always like to know it can back out if I need to. But Ding has closed that door, and that's fine. Is it because Gukesh can't come at the queen right now? It would require multiple moves before you could get a piece aimed there, I guess. Yeah, because you don't want to put the rook here because of the bishop. You don't want to put the queen here because of the knight. So yeah, you'd have to move the queen over here. You'd want to put the rook on e1 because of the knight, and then put this bishop down here. So it would take them 3 moves to attack the queen. But h4 is the best. Gukesh plays h4 because this bishop's sitting here annoying him. Let's get rid of it. Now this one I think I would figure out because I have faced a lot of opponents who shove all those kingside pawns toward me even after they've castled, and it seems to work a lot. But I have eventually learned that instead of retreating here, which you're going to get toast real fast, you push it forward slightly, then you're aiming at the backside of any pawns that start advancing. But in this case, I don't know about that because it looks pretty easy to attack it or get it trapped somehow. That is the best move, and that's what Ding played. Again, I think I might have figured that one out, but I would be afraid that it would get trapped in there somehow. No, maybe not that. If they played that, then I could slide in, and that's a check. They'd have to come back. I don't know, maybe you could get a repetition there. Oh, no, you could take the knight there because the knight's the only thing defending the rook. That's why they wouldn't try that. It took me a little bit, but I think that's why. Queen to b1 is the best move, and I'm trying to figure out why. It's not after the knight. We know that. Is it setting up a discovery? That could be possible. Oh, but it's giving up this pawn. Then why is it the best move? The best move is to give up this pawn. Okay, even though I forgot several times, Liren has been working on that pawn for, I don't know, 15 moves or something. It's been very laser focused on it, and piece by piece has maneuvered half of his army, 2/3 of his army around that pawn, and forced Gukesh to continue defending it. That can probably be pretty informative for people at my level, maybe your level too. Because a lot of times what we do is we look for one tactical thing like, oh, maybe I'll get a discover check here. Nope, okay. Maybe I can push this pawn down. Oh, they blocked it. What about this knight? I could hop over there and get a fork. Oh no, they saw it coming. That kind of thing. But in this case, he saw that pawn way back, probably as soon as Gukesh played the b5 or b4 here, saw that the c pawn was backward and has been aiming at it relentlessly ever since. But yeah, I have no idea how Gukesh determined that that was the best move because it gives up this pawn. But he did determine that that was the best move. So we get the pawn. For a second there, Stockfish said taking on e6 was better, but it looks like taking the pawn is best. I mean, taking the rook. And then, of course, there's an only move here, which is to take the rook. And now Ding is up a pawn, which sometimes is decisive at my level. And in many situations, I assume it's decisive at this level too. Now, again, this is one of the moves, and knight to e2, which of course is a fork of those 2 pieces. But wait, knight to e2 would just give up this pawn. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, Gukesh went for the middle. He's tired of this king just sitting here not castling. It's best to take back with the bishop, according to the engine, not the pawn. I would have taken with the pawn. Oh, it looks like Ding took with the pawn too, but the bishop's really better? Yeah, we're under -1 now. Backing up. The only way to maintain this -1.5 is to take with the bishop, which is this way. Is it still going to say that? Oh, it's even better after you do it? I don't understand that, and I don't understand why you wouldn't take here. Okay, but anyway, Ding took with the pawn, which, like I said, is probably what I would have done. Knight to e2 is the best move now by a long shot. It's the only move that's not a blunder. Gukesh found it, which I think one of us probably would have found that too. It's, you know, fairly obvious to fork those pieces because we do that all the time, even when it's not the best move. But in this case, we might have found that. Now, like I said, you're giving up the e-pawn here. Did Ding take the e-pawn? He did. And also, does Gukesh know he's been down a little bit this whole time? But now he's 2 pawns down, so he probably does know that he's down. Best move is to take the bishop. So we take the bishop. I thought when you were down pawns, you shouldn't trade pieces. I might be wrong about that. Well, now we have a discovery because we can move this bishop anywhere, and the queen's under threat, but maybe not there. I don't know where you would move it. Down there? Bishop to c5. Okay, that's what the engine recommends. Again, I think somebody at our level might have found that. I thought of it instantly and then looked over here to see what Stockfish said, but it says bishop to c5. Well, then you have to move the queen somewhere. And it says he would just take another pawn. Oh, well, maybe that's why he didn't do it. And I thought, why not continue harassing this queen that's been over here in my territory for all this time? But if you do that, you lose another pawn right in front of your king, which pens the other bishop and maybe gives up the other pawn. I was worried about those pawns for a long time, but it looks like they wouldn't have to worry about them now. Or queen to e1, which I guess aims here. Gukesh did not find those. He found queen to c2. Not sure what queen to c2 was aiming at. Maybe he was trying to wiggle around here to get that a-pawn? Maybe he was, because now Stockfish is worried about it and wants to come over here. Let's bring the queen over here to c4. That way they can't come around here and get that a-pawn. Ding found that. Didn't want him to come around here and get the a-pawn. If I could find it, Ding could find it. It is definitely not a good idea to trade right now. You want to go to queen to d2. And then it says Ding would castle. Oh, actually, it's not that much worse to trade queens. Trade queens will take with the knight, and they'll play rook to e1, and then we'll castle. But Gukesh found queen to d2. Still not sure exactly how the engine or Gukesh picked that move, but castling is definitely best for Ding now. He's waited 31 moves. He castled. I think I've waited that late to castle a few times too, but it was never a good idea like it was here. Bishop to d4. Oh, to aim at the knight, because the knight's getting irritating. Okay, or queen to d4. Stockfish likes this idea of the queens being side by side. It thinks they should be friends because it doesn't say they'll trade, at least not for a little bit, maybe way over here. But either one of them to d4, and I guess it's because of the knight. I might consider putting my bishop there. I think if I was in Gukesh's shoes here, down 2 pawns, I don't think I would put the queen there. But he put the bishop there, which aims at the knight. Wait, is this pawn not free? What am I missing? Apparently not, because any move other than what Ding played would be a blunder. But why isn't the pawn free? Because that's probably what I would play here. It would be bad, wouldn't it? Let's take this. Oh, because white has a mate in 7 now. Good grief. Well, that's how I would lose to you. I would have lost to one of these people on like move 4 or something, but not really, because I've played the French defense a few moves out. But anyway, queen to g5, and they're aiming right here. And there's nothing I can do about it, apparently. Because I would probably play g6 here, and then they would just come in here, and they're still aiming for mate. And I can't just block with the rook because their rook is there. So I would just have to take their rook, and they would take. Oh, they wouldn't take with the king, though. I'm so bad. Oh, my goodness. And then I would play e5, and they would just take that. And they're still aiming at mate, and there's nothing I can do about it. Well, that's why taking that pawn would be bad, because he would lose immediately. Sorry, here. Because of queen to g5. Okay, so let's assume that both Gukesh and Ding were aware. And that's why he put this here, not to target the knight, because I had this little tunnel vision focused on that quadrant of the board, but Gukesh is smarter than that. He's focused on other quadrants of the board as well, and wouldn't be surprised if he had also noticed this. So Ding needs to be aware of that. The only move that is not a blunder is knight to d3. I don't understand how does that prevent this? Oh, because the bishop's hanging. The queen's the only thing defending the bishop. Okay, so he's cut off the queen from defending the bishop. Gukesh needs to go e3 to keep defending the bishop, or just take down here with check. Gukesh defended the bishop. These rooks have been staring at each other. I didn't notice when that first happened, but the engine has been recommending it as a possibility the last few turns. e5 is the best move for black here. I guess it's because it keeps the bishop from pointed there. Also, the knight's defending e5 or taking the rook. It's gone back and forth here. Now it's settled on e5 with no follow-up. Ding took the rook. And just like earlier, it's much better to take back with the bishop rather than the king. Oh, the king would be in this line of fire, so that makes sense. Now you've set this up, but now Ding's up -2.5. If only he'll play e5, which he didn't play last turn, but he did play this turn. Although the knight's pinned, so why wouldn't you just take this? Oh, you would. It's his best move. But this pawn's undefended now. And it's a check. So you can go over there and then get the knight out of danger. Oh my goodness. So now Ding is back up 2 pawns. This pawn here was just a distraction. You have to block that check with one of your bishops. Obviously not your queen at this point. Although earlier it said a queen trade wasn't that bad. But here you need to block with one of your bishops. Gukesh chose the light squared bishop, which is no longer pointed at the knight. But the knight's still in danger, so you got to do something about that. And the thing you do about that is defend it with your light squared bishop. Or take. That would have been fine too. Ding defended. I guess he chose this over that because you're activating this piece that's been a little passive back there. And maybe he's thinking about sliding it in this way to e4 because that bishop's pinned. And now you have to put either your queen or your other bishop on g3, which they could have blocked with last turn, but they didn't. But now you got to do it, it says. And that's probably because Stockfish sees this coming. Maybe Gukesh saw it coming too, so he did block that. So now now the light squared bishop's not pinned anymore. It's still his best move to put it on e4, and it's the only move that's not a blunder, and Ding did it, because if you take, which is okay, we take back with the pawn. The pawn's defended by the queen, the pawn is defending the knight, but the best move is king to h2, which I guess defends both bishops in case you have to move the queen and quit defending the bishop on g3, and that's what Gukesh played. But now we're over 3.5, getting close to -4. Taking the b pawn would be fine here. I think I would consider that. It's a free pawn. I don't know if I would consider h6, but Ding did, and that's what the engine says was the best move. I think I would assume I was ahead in this position, but I would have no idea it was close to -4. I would assume about -2 because of the 2 pawns, one of which is a passed pawn. I'm just going to have trouble marching it down there, is the problem, because I need this bishop to defend the knight. The knight doesn't have a lot of safe squares to move to right now other than taking that pawn. And then I still have to worry about advancing the d pawn. What am I going to have to put my queen behind it to get it to go? Yeah, so I would never assume I was up -4 here. I might not even assume -2 because the other pawn that I'm ahead is this one, and it doesn't have anywhere to go right now. But the bishop pair is also very powerful. I have to be careful about this pawn because their b pawn is halfway down, and there's not a lot that can defend my b pawn. If they get that out of the way, they have a passed pawn. Anyway, best move here is b5 to keep Ding from taking it, or queen to d2, which protects it. Maybe it's because it's obvious that it's in danger, but Gukesh played bishop to h3, which is why he thought he put his queen there, I guess. But now you can just go to h5 or d1, and it's -6. Yeah, when the engine said to move here, it wasn't thinking about this. It was just thinking about hiding the king and protecting both bishops. But when Gukesh moved it there, he was considering the possibility of this bishop to h3, which he played. But again, queen has an easy getaway. Ding chose the best one. Best move here is bishop to d6. Don't know why that's best. Is it to keep the king from getting out? Or protecting that pawn? Maybe both. Maybe it's a multi-purpose move. So, good for Gukesh for finding that. Best move is queen to c2 check, which gets rid of this pawn, which I said I would have gotten rid of earlier, but then I would have lost the game. But Ding got rid of it at the right time. King moves out of check. Ding takes the pawn. So patience and focus is what I'm getting out of this. You saw how long he spent closing in on that c3 pawn, lining up, adjusting, preparing, bringing more pieces, preventing Gukesh from defending it, not worrying about the a pawn until he had the c pawn. And then as soon as he was able, he went and got the a pawn too, but he focused here and he was really patient about that pawn, even though Gukesh undefended it a long time ago. Now on move 42, best move according to the engine is bishop to f1 or bishop to c5. If he'd played bishop to c5, we just would have had a little trade there, but Gukesh played bishop to e6 check, and maybe it's because he thought of this, that if he went king to h7, it's a draw. Maybe that's why he tried this, knowing that if Ding went to h7 with the king, that Gukesh could take this bishop with check. And you can't take back with the pawn because that bishop on e6 is pointed at our undefended queen. Well, I guess you could, but then Gukesh would have an extra piece, an extra minor piece. So you have to go to h8. And after Ding went to h8, Gukesh resigned. Because now what do? Bishop to h3, just put the bishop back where it was and you're down -12. Queen to g1, which is down there. I don't know what the other suggestions might be, but yeah, what do you play if you're white here? I would not have known I was toast if I was playing with the white pieces here. I would have known it was tough. Passed pawn, 2 squares from promotion, probably going to be easy to defend it. But yeah, at my level, we don't resign at this point, most of us. So a good job for Ding, who was not the favorite to win this whole tournament, and Obviously, I think most people expected him to win some games, but to come out of the gate so strong like this was impressive. And I think I learned a few things from this. If nothing else, I maybe learned of a different way to think about the game than I do now. Number one, I rarely look for, search for, or attack backward pawns. Sometimes I notice them, but I don't know what to do about it. And that's something I can focus on, because that C3 pawn, the amount of time and effort that Ding spent focusing on that, going after it, was impressive and instructional. I'm going to try to take that to heart. I've repeated it multiple times now, but that's not for your sake or to make the video more boring. That's so it will sink into my head, which was the whole point of looking at this game. As I said, by now they've played a few more games by the time that you've seen it, and one or the other of them is ahead or they're tied. Good luck to both of them. Hopefully I'll get a chance to look at a few of the other games as the tournament progresses. Thank you for spending your time here, and I'll see you next time.